Oh, hey. No, you're good. Good morning, everyone. We're still waiting for people to join. There was some Zoom technicality link issues, but just stand by for the next few minutes.
Probably having trouble since there's nobody here, which is unfortunate. So hopefully, Alicia said she was going to send the new link out to everybody who registered. So yeah, let's exercise my least favorite virtue, which is patience. And yeah, thank you, everybody. Sam called me right away, but apparently Alex fixed it so that Caroline got in, George got in, and I'm in, but there's nobody really there, just 3 or 4 people. So, I'm glad you're sending it out to everybody, and I hope they'll get that and log on. There are only 6 participants, and I'm not sure what to say about that, period. Um, Caroline,
Yes.
um, Alicia's wondering if she says she sent a whole new link. Should she send everybody back to the original one? I don't know.
I haven't gotten her
I
new.
honestly, I've never encountered this before, ever.
Right. Let me check. Um, I'm using, so Sam sent us that link on Friday that I assumed he set up just like to make it a little bit safer in terms of.
Oh, yeah, no, we're trying to prevent the Zoom bombing. I understand that, but but clearly something's wrong.
Yeah, so do we, I haven't gotten a link, but I probably just have to re-register for the event. And then we
You
can,
haven't gotten
is
anything
that,
from
is that
Alicia.
where you think everyone is? Um, Adela, what link are you using right now? Is this the one sent to you when you registered? Oh, 1 second. Oh, sorry, Adela, we can't hear you.
Hi, sorry, I'll repeat all that. No, it wasn't from the link when I registered. There was a second link that talked about the trollers.
Mhm.
And it also gave a password, but I did not have to use the password to get in, which is kind of peculiar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming, Trudy, that everyone else like Adela that registered received that second link, but not sure why they aren't on this one.
I know. All right, I'm just texting Alicia.
If anything, maybe you hop on that link and see if everyone's there.
I'm sorry, Caroline, I didn't hear you because I was texting Alicia.
Yeah, maybe hop on the link that she just sent to see if that's where everyone is.
Oh, okay.
And then you can come back to this one.
Okay. I'm
Thank you.
going to try the link that you just sent.
What?
I was talking to Alicia.
Okay.
All right, let me see if I can get on that one. I have to leave this meeting temporarily.
Yes, but you can come back.
So, Caroline, I went to the other room and there's nobody in it. So, I honestly have no idea what is going on. But what I do know is that we have a few people here and we're going to meditate together. Because what better way to deal with stress? This is stressful. I have to say it's stressful because I know there are more than us who would be coming to sitting group today. There's no question about that. So, okay, so let's sit together and see what happens. And Caroline, you keep an eye out in case we have people joining us. Okay.
Yes, a lot of phone numbers are coming into the Zoom meeting, which so not Zoom accounts.
It makes me think that yes, that they're tuning in some other way because they can't get in. Do you know what I mean? That's because they can't get in their, I don't know. I don't understand it. But I'm noticing that too, that we don't usually have these kinds of phone numbers looking like this.
Right. Just for a future reference, it's now we're encouraging and sort of requiring people to have Zoom accounts to log on, just because for the past few sitting groups, we've experienced some Zoom bombing. And to make things a little bit more safe, we're having people log in with Zoom accounts, as well as if you have to speak, go ahead and raise your hand and I'll unmute you, just so we have a little bit more control and can keep this a safe space for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. So welcome whoever is here. All I can see are your little green phones. But I can see some of you have, I guess, already got Zoom accounts and came on. So I want to just introduce myself. I'm Trudy, the founder of InsightLA, and I am really happy to be here with my dear friend, old friend, decades-long friend, George Mumford. We were friends back in the day in Cambridge, and George still lives in Boston, but comes out to work in California, so we've kept our connection really strong. And George is going to teach with me today, and but I'm going to lead some meditation first. I know I need that, and I bet we all do right now. So let's sit together. However your body is best able to sit still, just find that framework for your body. And I like to begin by taking a deep breath in and releasing. And one more time. Releasing any tension. And breathing in the aliveness of this moment. And breathing out any stress you may be carrying, just letting it go, letting it be for now. Resting your attention gently with the movement of the breath, just steadying the heart, steadying the mind. By feeling the ebb and flow of the rhythm of the breath. And whenever the attention wanders away into the past or the future, just gently coming back to paying attention right here, right now. Setting aside concerns. And just knowing this meditation is a slice of life. Where it's possible to be present with the full spectrum of how it is to be this particular human being. Life in the form of me and of you and of every single thing that arises in our consciousness. Just sensing and feeling the movement of the breath in the body. And if it was stressful joining this morning, as it was for all of us, just letting that stress dissipate with each mindful, attentive breath. We're offering particular attention to the out breath, the calming breath. Following that breath all the way to the end, to its vanishing point. Noticing how the end of the out breath just dissolves into empty space. Where the next breath is born. Breathing with the whole body. One breath arises, next breath passes away, next breath is born and passes away.
Trudy, you're muted.
Now bringing attention to the noticing itself, to the awareness that knows when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. That knows the stream of thoughts and feelings and sensations. We're studying the birth and death of experience. how each sound, each sensation, each breath, thought, and feeling is born, has its being, and passes away. So, good morning again. Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad to see that some of you at least have made it into this Zoom. And I want to apologize to everybody for the stress of trying to find your way in, which we all went through this morning in our team's effort to make this a safer space from the Zoom bombers the young internet trolls who'd been bothering us for a couple weeks. The procedures were changed so that you have to create a Zoom account now. And I just think it's going to take a little while for everybody to sort of figure that out and get that done. But I just appreciate so much that you persevered and that you made it. And this is a good sign for your practice, the determination to show up and be present. And today is a great day for us, a special day, because my dear friend George Mumford is here. Maybe you can wave, George. And George and I go way back to when I lived in Cambridge, and we've been friends for decades. And because George has done a lot of work out here in LA with the Lakers and lots of other people, we've been able to stay more closely connected than I can stay with some of my other friends. So yeah, let us know in the chat because I'm sure whatever trouble you've had, other people have had, just let us know. And Caroline will make a note of it so that we can straighten that out for next week. So yeah, I want to encourage you to do that because we need to find out. Thank you, Gina. So I guess it was, I don't know. I couldn't get on either. And having a Zoom account is free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's something that I guess was figured out to keep everything safe.
I told Trudy today the issue was that first link they got, a password was required, but they weren't given the password for the
Well,
link. But then they were able to get in, is from my understanding. Thank you, everyone who messaged me and clarified things. I'm happy you got in.
yeah, I'm happy you got in too. Very happy. And I'm also thanking Alex, who helped Caroline get in. Alex really saved the day today. And I want to give a shout out to Alicia Talbert, our new executive director. She's been here for a few months now. Alicia, I don't know if you have a photo. I can't even see you, but I know you're here, Alicia.
I'm here, and I'm sorry I'm not on camera, but
Okay.
I would scare everybody to the Santa Monica Mountains if you saw me right now. But I echoed both Trudy and Caroline. I'm so sorry for the obstacles today. It just makes the teaching that much more sacred and beautiful. But you won't have to encounter this again. Caroline did successfully keep out about 8 Zoom bombers who've been trying to get in all morning. So the new protocol is working, but I think we should have given you a bit more warning. So I'm sorry about that. We've turned off the passcode, and we'll give you plenty of warning in the future before we change things up. So hi, everybody. It's great to see you. And thank you, Trudy and George, for this lovely sit.
Yeah, thank you, Alicia. Thanks so much. Okay. So I think the meditation, at least it helped me shed the stress of wondering, where is everybody? And imagining you all trying to get in. We have been, as those of you who've been coming know, we've been studying the Eightfold Path and looking at some of the path factors. And I know Eric talked about some of how the Four Noble Truths link into the Eightfold Path. The 8th step on the Eightfold Path is understanding the Four Noble Truths, of course. And so all, as I've said, all the Buddha's teachings kind of nest within and around each other in an incredibly brilliant and intricate pattern of teaching and study and practice. And I had recommended, when asked, a book called The 8 Steps to Happiness, or The 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness by Bhante Gujaratna. But there's another book called A Whole Life Path by Gregory Kramer. And Caroline will find that and put it in the chat for you, because it's a much more recent book. It just came out, I think, right before the pandemic. And Gregory teaches insight dialogue, which is a very relational practice. So the book has that perspective, which is great. And I'm going to make my remarks a little more brief today, since we got kind of a late start. I want to make room for George. But one of the things that definitely happened in the early days of my practice, and I think it was true for many people, the at least the young Western teachers were teaching the meditation part of the path much more than the parts of the path that have to do, Caroline's people waiting, much more than the parts of the path that have to do with how we actually live our lives when we're not on the meditation cushion or chair, or lying down, or however you meditate. And it's funny. It reminded me kind of in medicine. If you got really sick, you would be given some medications for your illness, and you would probably also be given guidance on how to live a healthy way. Maybe take some changes in your diet, or make sure you exercise, or get more sleep, things like that. And some of us might tend toward the holistic solution. I'm just going to change my diet, and I'm going to start doing yoga, and I don't really want to take those medicines. And then other people just want to take the medicine and don't really want to do the lifestyle changes. But actually, to be healthy, we need to do both. So we need to meditate, but we also need to bring attention to how we're living, not just because it's more spiritual or more aligned with the principles of meditation, but because doing that actually helps the meditation too. They just are, it's a holographic situation. They support each other. And so the teaching of the Buddha was very clear that we live this life for our own well-being and benefit, and that we live this life for the well-being and benefit of others, and that both are important. And of course, we're going to sometimes fall out of, probably always is a process of falling out of balance on one side or the other of this, that, sometimes I know that, well, we fall out of balance. Let's just put it that way. And Suzuki Roshi, he said something so beautiful. He said, life is continually falling out of balance against a backdrop of perfect balance. And that backdrop of perfect balance, what is that? That's our awareness itself. That's our mindful attention. That's our ability to know what's happening inside, outside, with me, with you, in our relationships, in our communities. That's really what this whole path is about. So I'm going to make room for George and invite you to say whatever it is you'd like to contribute, George. And I'm just so happy you're here. It's just a joy. I actually got to see George. Was it last week or was it just this week? I can't even remember time anymore. You're still muted. You're muted, George. Can't hear you.
Mute.
Now we can hear you.
Yes. Well, it wouldn't let me unmute. So,
Oh, great.
so I
Great.
tried a couple of times, but third time's a charm.
Well, this is the comedy of errors this morning. What can I say?
Yeah, well, I understand it because you're trying to keep the hackers out, so you don't want people who get in to have access to the mic, you might say.
Right.
So, so it was Wednesday, I believe we
That's
hung out.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I think it was Wednesday night or one of
It
those.
was great. It was so great
Yeah.
to see you.
Yes. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm so grateful to see you all on this call. And I'm sorry it's not in person. That would be my preferred method, but we could say that about a lot of things. And Trudy and I talked about it, and she was sharing how she was talking about the Four Noble Truths and the fourth truth specifically around the Eightfold Noble Path. And I thought it would be fun to talk about the integrity piece or the morality piece. So just to sum it up a little bit, so you have eight factors, and they are right view, right intention, or a thought. I use intention, right view, and right thought. That's the wisdom piece. And then you have right speech, right action, right livelihood. That's the morality or the integrity piece. And then you have the third part, which I think a lot of people focus on, is right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. That is called the mental discipline. In some of the texts, they interpret it as concentration, but I think that's misleading because that makes concentration more the focus rather than seeking understanding. So I use the word, I see it as mental discipline or mental training, that right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Now, the interesting thing about it is that that piece, which a lot of people focus on, if it's good, it could be mindfulness, but to be right mindfulness that leads to peace, it has to be guided by right understanding, right intention, and right speech, right action, right livelihood. And so when it's grounded in that, then it becomes more powerful. So for me, teaching this to folks not in meditation centers, I had to figure out how to bring the threefold training, the wisdom training, the morality training, and the mental discipline into daily life and make it available for people. And so for us, just thinking about where we are now as a community, as a country, where there's a lot of wrong speech going on out there. There's a lot of hate speech. And even on this call, just thinking about, for me, because I was looking for, I put in the Zoom meeting number, and I was looking for a place to put in the passcode. There was no place to put in the passcode. So I actually got out, went back in and saying, well, maybe I didn't get in right. So what does this have to do with this eightfold path? So I want to focus on right speech. And so right speech isn't just the speech, because we create with the word. And our intention is what causes the consequence of our behavior, or whether it's through word, thought, or deed. And so for me, just being able to notice what was happening without having the negative, I don't know if you folks have that inner critic, the negative self-talk saying, well, what's wrong? It shouldn't be this way, and on and on and on. That's a form of wrong speech, in the sense that it is focused on what's wrong, and it's not bringing harmony to myself, and it's not bringing harmony to the people who are actually here trying to get us up and running. Does that make sense what I'm talking about? Because I want to make it really, really simple, that it's not just a word, but the word, the thought, the deed. And so when we're talking about in morality or right speech, right action, right livelihood, just focusing on right speech, is when I realize that if my intention, if my understanding is, when I have a positive mindset, when I have a motivation or a mindset, a view of love, I'll just use love, then because the right understanding is love, then the intention is love, and then the right speech is going to be aligned with love. It's really, really simple. When my mind is right, if I have on the love glasses, then right speech, right action, right livelihood is going to be in alignment with that love. And so that's why, we talk about mindfulness, making the effort to be present, to be mindful, and then being able to sustain attention on what we're doing. So for me, I'm trying to get into this call. And so that's my focus. And I don't have time to be focusing on what's wrong, or maybe I'm not doing it right, or I'm clumsy with computers or whatnot. It's really more about staying on task and just really focusing on seeking to understand what's going on here. How do I connect? How do I get on this call? And then I was able to do that, but then being able to understand that, being patient, and just really seeking to understand what's going on here. Am I reacting or responding? And I know when I'm reacting, there's no space between stimulus and response. And that's when I get into the speech that is not harmonious, it's not inclusive, it's not a speech that actually helps me to stay focused in the moment. And so when I'm motivated by love, when I have the right understanding, then my intentions are going to be right. And if my intentions are right, then the right speech, right action, right livelihood is going to be right. I'm going to make the right effort. I'm going to make the right concentration, and I'm going to have the right mindfulness. Because I had the pleasure of working in prison, and I like to share, I'm from Boston, So we have a part of Boston, like it's interesting. The inmates have this street cred thing where, you know, if you come from Charlestown, you folks probably saw the movie The Town. That's where all the bank robbers come from. And so and they're really good at it. They make the effort, they're mindful, and they're concentrated. But it's wrong effort, wrong concentration, wrong mindfulness. And so being able to understand that they're seeking to, you know, I won't say it's hate, but it's not compassion, it's not generosity involved there. And so to the degree that I understand how to work this process in my daily life, and just thinking about this call, just because I was able to keep my mind in that space where I was open and willing to learn and let the unfolding unknown moment express itself, having enough faith, having enough confidence to realize that I'll get there, and I need to just focus on the moment and be clear about what glasses I have on, which my right, if I have right view. When I have right view, and my intention is to be on this call and to serve and to be in love with you all while we're here communicating, and that's the key. So I could talk a lot about it, but just being real with what's happening right now, that's the best use of the practice. The immediacy of experience, understanding the unity between thought and action, and the commitment to stay present, the commitment to make mistakes and to learn from them and not be identified with the mistake or being identified with not being able to connect. But we're here, and it's being grateful. I was doing some studying last couple of weeks, and I was reading this chapter by Eric Butterworth, and it was The Grateful Heart. And in that chapter, it had the quotation of a grateful mind is a great mind that attracts great things to it. So it's another way of saying, when I'm in gratitude, I have right view. So my intentions are going to be right intentions, and my actions are going to be right actions. My speech is going to be right speech. My livelihood is going to be right livelihood. And I'm going to make right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. So Trudy, I'll just in there, and you can add to that or whatever. But I think that I wanted to make it as clear and as simple as possible, that it's really simple. It took me decades to figure this out. If my mind is right, everything else is going to be right. If I have right view, then everything else is going to be right.
Yeah, I think that what I appreciate is you're using the situation that we were in this morning, really bringing it down to the most practical, concrete, because so many times, there's lots of ways that people practice, and some people are more drawn to the more mental understanding and reading books and maybe an intellectual kind of approach, which is great. And it also has to be balanced with this practical here and now, and then again, some people get really caught up with I just have to be here now and I can't even think about anything else. And they get too riveted to the practice and forget about a wider awareness, or forget about the path factors that you were discussing, just how we live, our ethical living, and that's important. They're of a piece, really, when you've been practicing for a while and meditating for a while. You understand, meditation is just a slice of life, and whatever's happening in my life is coming up in my meditation. But meditation gives me that chance to step back and to really just see things with that wise view that you're talking about. And I think, the Buddha, the word in Pali that they translate as right for all of these elements of the Eightfold Path is the word sama. And Gil Fronsdale pointed out that word can also be understood as complete, or right in the sense of not right from wrong, because that's dualistic and that's where our minds usually go. And then we worry about, am I doing it right or not? Just like you were saying, that inner critic. But right in the sense of, righteous or upright, or that way, standing that way in the midst of our life and experience. And it also, I see that Lana has her hand up, and I want to just say a word that everybody today, you're not going to be able to unmute yourselves. And this is, again, just one of the precautions that we're taking against our intruders who were pretty rude. I wasn't here when that happened, but happened twice, I guess. And each time it happened to be a Sunday when I wasn't here. I think that's how it happened. Or no, the one I was here, it happened during the Zoom groups. I mean, the breakout groups, excuse me, not during my teaching. So because we have that precaution, you are going to need to go to the reaction button down toward the bottom right of your screen, where you can use the raise hand function, and then Caroline or Alicia will unmute you. So that's just a little bit of a different procedure. So we could start. I think it's great. We can have some exchange and do the rest of our teaching in that context of questions and reflections and responses. I like that because it has the charm of being, then I know that actually what we're talking about, or what I'm talking about, is something that you'd actually like to hear about. So, whoops, Lena disappeared.
Lana, I think you're able to speak now. You've been unmuted.
That was a mistake. I didn't
Oh,
really
okay.
have anything to say.
Oh,
Okay.
no worries.
There you are.
So disregard that.
Was the raise hand the mistake or the disappearing the mistake?
The raised hand was a mistake.
Oh, okay, okay,
Wow.
okay. No problem. You know, if you hold your hand up like this for a while in front of the screen, even if you're just like, my nose was itching this morning and I was rubbing my nose, it will actually can trigger the raise hand function. So that's how smart Zoom is. And one of the things that I've always appreciated really about you, George, is this ability to be super practical and down to earth in your teaching. And it's probably something that you had to really hone to work with all the young athletes that you worked with and that you continue to work with, or the people, the incarcerated individuals that you worked with, where, you know, you really have, I mean, it's what is our life actually, except this everyday practical, these perceptions that flow all day long, right? The rest is concept, the rest is idea. They're beautiful concepts, they're intricately linking brilliant ideas. But what we actually have is right here, right now. And that when we talk about paying attention, that word paying attention, you know, it's like we pay something, we offer something, we give something, and what we're giving is our love. And we don't think of it that way, of loving the moment, but that
Right.
kind of attention is a kind of love. So thank you for naming that, George. And I'm going to invite Liz to speak.
Good morning, everybody. I'm thrilled that I got in, amazed. I was going to switch to another program, but I finally got in. So I have a concern. I'm in the mindfulness meditation teachers program. So I'm supposed to be teaching mindfulness I'm a Buddhist practitioner, very, very loving the practice, very important to me. But here I am teaching mindfulness in a secular environment, and I'm very concerned about it. And one of the things that I want to bring into my teaching, of course, I'm going to sneak lots of Buddhist stuff in and teach from a Buddhist perspective, but not mention the word. And George, you have a lot of experience with this in a secular environment, so I'd like your opinion. About 10 years ago, I recognized, I don't know, it didn't come, I don't think it came from Vipassana, maybe it came from a different kind of teacher, that we were practicing for the benefit of all beings. And that is so incredibly important to me. Of course, I'm practicing to be less harmful. And that to myself and others to be a wiser, kinder person. But practicing for the benefit of all beings and to do less harm is my motivation. So I'm wondering, George, how do you bring this into a secular environment? Thank you.
Yes. My experience is I lived in a meditation center for 6 years, and I studied and did a lot of sitting, long-term retreats and whatnot. And what I would do, my process was that I would always take the essence of the Buddhist teachings, and that would be my foundation. And then I would interpret. So it actually took more effort to really understand the Buddhist teachings really clearly, so that I knew how to language it and to bring it to folks without losing the essence. And so that was my practice. But also when I lived at the meditation center, we would get requests. I lived at the Cambridge Insight Meditation Center, and we would get requests from all sorts of organizations. It could be a youth center, it could be a business like New England Telephone and Telegraph. That's what it was called instead of, AT&T. They had all these different, and they had divisions of it. So people from every area, schools, I used to go in to different places. And my challenge was, how do I bring this process of being present and, as the Buddha would summarize, to do good, avoid evil, and purify the mind, which I call the mind heart. And so the thing was to go in and to be able to just listen and let the mindfulness and the wisdom that was present in me be able to assess the situation that I was in, and then asking, well, what do they need and how can I help them? I'll give you an example. I was teaching, there's one prison, and I was early on in my teaching career, and I made these amazing, I had this amazing Dharma talk ready for the inmates when I went into the prison. And when I got in there, I realized that out of the 30 people in my class, 28 of them were Spanish speaking only. So I had to, I had an interpreter. So and there were no books. I went through Harvard Square. There were very few books that had meditation or yoga books in Spanish. I mean, Bo Lozoff and the Human Kindness Foundation, they sent me, we're all doing time in Spanish. But in that moment, and this is what the mindfulness of wisdom is really helpful, just like what we had today, is like, you got to meet what's there. And then with your mindfulness and wisdom, there's a knowing that comes out of that. And you start languaging. So I started languaging and keeping it really simple because of the interpreter. So that probably impacted my ability, that what we call a roadblock became a stepping stone and leveled my ability to keep things simple. And even though I have these ideas about the Dharma talk, I have to meet people where they are. And so by teaching in so many different environments, it helped me to see how the essence can be communicated without losing the essence. But it's really more about my mindfulness and my wisdom from moment to moment that's able to observe things and then bring the teachings and figure out. So a big part of the practice, I don't think we give enough credit to, is this idea of wise reflection. And this is what the Buddha taught his son, to reflect before, during, and after. What are you going to do and what's the potential outcome? If it's going to be harmful to you, it's not to be done. If it's going to be harmful to another, it's not to be done. So it's only when it's helpful to yourself and other should it be done. And so that's before, and we make the best laid plans. Then you get in there, and then you have to see, well, this is not helpful. How do I adapt in real time, change it? But then afterwards, it's what we call the post-performance reflection. You reflect on, what worked, what didn't work. So this is really hard because the teaching is really about understanding what's wholesome, what's helpful, and what's not. It's really that simple. And if it's not helpful, it's not to be done. So does that make sense? And so you'll figure it out. I trust that you'll figure it out. But to me, I spent a lot of time, just really understanding, how do I bring the threefold training to folks in a way that makes sense, but I don't lose the essence. And it's interesting because people used to accuse me of having a watered down Dharma, or they thought because I just work with inmates or I just work with athletes that my practice wasn't very strong, and that I was just kind of, kind of winging it. But the thing is, I'm kind of like a scholar and a practitioner. That balance, and living in the center for 6 years, I got to study a lot, do a lot of sitting and talking with teachers and visiting teachers. So I put a lot of time in to just doing the practice and make my practice strong. And then how do I express myself and how do I teach that to others? And so sometimes I forget how much effort that I put into it, but I'm kind of intense. I'm a type A personality with kindness, not with hostility. Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. This is a challenge, but I think it's a good one. And yes, I've already, yes, it's an enormous challenge, but I'm loving it. And what I have to remember is everybody wants really in their heart to be good and to be kind.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone wants that. And to help them do that, and to touch into my, to love, to remember to love all the time, which is not my natural stance, but it's wonderful at 82 to force this on myself, to touch into love at 82 and bring that love there, which is again a wonderful challenge for me. And I am going to close all my sessions with dedicating the merit to all beings everywhere, even though that may not be secular, but I don't care. I'm going to dedicate the merit at the end of my sessions because I need to do that. Thank you.
I'll just say, I call it the masterpiece, but you can call it your Buddha nature, your Christ consciousness, your Kuan Yin energy, your divine spark, that we all have that.
Yes.
And then cultivate that. And in that heart space is, for me, it's for the greater good, for the greatest good. It's always about serving. It's always about getting beyond the illusion of separateness and realizing what I do and give out there comes back to me.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
And I just want to say, I don't think benefiting all beings is Buddhist. I just have to say that. I think it's just caring. And yeah. Anyway, Gina, hi. You can, I guess Caroline will unmute you. Sorry, you can't unmute yourself. That's my habitual phrase. You can unmute yourself, but today you cannot.
I just wanted to frame some of the things that George said. I thought it was so impactful to just say that the intention of love first and then the action afterwards. And I think that that's just, it's so simple, but that really resonated to me. And I would imagine that when you're working with the inmates, it's possibly difficult at times to get people to get to that place of having the intention of love, because sometimes you have fear and anger and whatever emotions. And I think it's really beautiful to be able to know that it's just about getting the person to go to that place of feeling love first, and then what can happen afterwards. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll just say a little bit about that. And it's taken me decades to figure this out. This guy, Lipton, wrote a book called, I think Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief. And what he said on a cellular level, we're either in growth mode or survival mode. So you're either in fight, flight, or freeze, or you're in love. So you're in fear or you're in love. And the first thing, in order to get to love, you got to get out of fear. And so it's really simple. So if you start off with love, or you notice this fear there, how do you abandon fear? Then now we're getting into right effort, right? How do you abandon fear, and how do you cultivate the opposite of fear, which is love? And so what you hit on is really huge. And I've been teaching in this way, where when there's no space between stimulus and response, that's when you come in reacting in fear mode. And when you can create space between stimulus and response, and the practice allows us to do that, then in that space, you have the freedom and power to choose love over fear. And even if you don't, then you can reflect on it and figure out how to work on it. So what you said and what we just talked about is so huge that I can't overstate it. So thank you.
And I just want to say, I don't know if you've heard this, George, but I read this whole thing about how using the word inmate, some people don't like that word, that we're trying to say people who are incarcerated and emphasize the human, the people part
Yes,
first.
yes.
You know, instead of using that whole, your whole identity is that you're incarcerated. So I just wanted to mention that because I didn't know if you'd heard that too.
Yes, not only that, but calling them prison guards is unhelpful either. They're correction officers.
Exactly.
Even if they're not acting like it.
I was just going to say, even if their idea of correction is not very humane sometimes.
Right. So yeah, that's once again, that's the word, that the word creates it, and it creates the energy. And so we have to be careful whether that word is right speech, harmonious or not.
Right. Right. Thank you. Okay, so do you want to unmute Cameron, somebody?
Yes.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you very much for this talk. I had a question. It might have just been answered, but in case there's more to add to this, I'm curious about, I understand starting with right intention would help everything else down the line, but how do you check to make sure, yes, this intention is actually the right one? Because sometimes it does get tricky in that balance of, am I thinking about myself? Am I thinking about the other? And it's not as clear, black and white to me, like what is the actual right intention here? So is there a check you do?
Yes. So the thing is, sometimes you have to, that's where clarity is really important, because sometimes we have an intention, but it's not just having the intention, but understanding what the outcome of that intention is going to be. So you understand what I'm saying? So my intention is to be kind, but then, and you have the intention to be kind, but then you get hit with a barrage and you go into survival mode. And then your intention is just to survive, not to be loving. You understand what I'm saying? So right intention is something, and how do you know you have the right intention? Because it's going to come from, so we talk about the three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance or delusion. So if your intention is the opposite of greed, is the opposite of hatred, and is focused on wisdom, then your intention is going to be clear. Whatever it is what you're going to do. Like I said before, it's going to be helpful or not, because the practice is about understanding what's wholesome. So if you have a wholesome view and a wholesome intention, you're going to have wholesome action. And so sometimes, even though I say that, there's going to be variations on the theme, but to the degree that I can be clear about what it is I'm trying to do. And sometimes I don't know, I don't have clarity. I just know I don't want to cause any harm. I just want to, because especially when we're doing things where there's really no roadmap, or we don't really know, because it's not just the content, the context is pretty damn important. And so to ask the question, as Alan Watts would say, is to know the answer. So when you ask it, you ask yourself, what's my intention? And sometimes when you play it out, you realize, well, there's the intention I'm conscious of, but there's an intention that I'm unconscious of, is what we call implicit motives, or the motives that are unseen. That's why we have to really look and be clear, and it may take a lot of time to really get clear with our intention before we go to action. And so we're in a hurry. We're in Instagram universe. So we want things immediately. And some things we have to contemplate and reflect on, spend a lot of time seeking to understand before we get there. But even if you have the wrong intention and you do something, then your job is to notice, okay, when I just notice how you relate to intentions. Okay, I thought I had clear intentions, but I didn't. Then it's not that you were wrong and you can't, you change that or you learn from it. See, that's the whole thing. Because on one level, we say, okay, we don't want wrong intentions, but sometimes it's important to notice when the wrong intention is present, how your body feels, how it affects your mind, how it affects everything, right? So if you know if you're going to fight, flight, and freeze, it's probably not the right intention. You understand what I'm saying? But this, even though I'm saying that, there's so much nuance here. But it really takes looking closely, because to meditate means to contemplate. To contemplate means to look at repeatedly and to look at closely. And so this process of just seeing it once and not having to really understand it, it takes many, many repetitions, because with mindfulness, we're stitching things together. So each time we go over it, we pick up a little bit more. Does that make sense? And so it's a process. I say, look at it as a process and not just a thought, and then you're just there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cameron, I'm going to add something to that, which is this, that George referred earlier to the Buddha teaching his son how to reflect on his actions. And he taught him this method that actually I found very useful, which is that you ask yourself, like at the beginning, your intention seems like a really good idea, right? Like, or I met this person and I asked them out and now we're going to start a relationship or whatever it might be. And then he said, but ask yourself, once you're into it, how's it going? Like, did it match your intention? Your intention might have been loving and beneficial and good. Well, did it turn out that way or not? And then if it still seems good, keep going. And then when you finished whatever the action was, so the relationship might not be a good example, but look back and ask yourself again, did it live up to my intention? And then, and this is the really interesting part, he said, a few months later, do it again. Because things, how we perceive things changes. I would have to say a few years later in my own experience, sometimes I look back and I was just like, wow, it seemed like a good idea at the time. But I think that was very practical and helpful too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trudy, there's a question in the chat from Rick, or it's addressed to George. So George, if you see the question in the chat.
It's interesting. I was just reading it. In your prison work, did you ever find yourself working with prisoners who were in for life, let alone facing a death penalty, people who were absolutely certain that they were falsely accused and imprisoned? If so, did you find a way of leading such people towards right view? So it's interesting you say that, because I worked in one of the prisons that I worked in was a prison where most of the inmates there were lifers. Some of them were double lifers. And I would say they were my best students because they knew that they were in there. And I never got into guilt or innocence. I just focused on, are you doing time, or is the time doing you? And so when you're in here, whether you're falsely accused and you're working through it or not, you have to focus on the moment and focus on continuing to develop yourself. And so I would have to say that, because I try not to get into that stuff. If they wanted to ask me about it, I would. But these folks, they used to thank me just for going in, because I was helping them make the best out of a bad situation. And so it's always about the quality of mind. And it's, as a matter of fact, one of my first Dharma talks, the title of the talk was "Prison as a Frame of Mind," because that's what it is. Because I was out there when I was using drugs, I was in prison. And the funny thing about it, we all imprison ourselves in one way or another. So the bad news is we imprison ourselves. The good news is, because we imprison ourselves, we can let ourselves out. So this whole idea of working with inmates and just teaching them how to just be in the moment wherever they are, and to bring as much love and understanding to it as they can. is that simple and that challenging. So thanks for that question.
If anybody else has either a question or just something to offer from your own practice, it could be, or any question specifically for George. But we're always happy to hear whatever you're going through. And oh, good, okay, Adela. And I just wanted to say before Adela that I in my own sort of preoccupation with what was happening of people trying to get in. Today, I really forgot to express my gratitude for being on land that belonged to the indigenous people, the Tongva, the Chumash, the Keys people, way, way, way before us, and to give a shout out for Black History Month and Chinese New Year. Okay, Adela. I think she has to be unmuted.
Thank you. Now I'm unmuted, I think, yes. George, I found this idea of right speech can be the internal speech you give yourself very helpful. And one of the things that I'm up against right now and trying to find that space between stimulus and response in my thoughts for myself is aging and my body. My body is doing things to me that I didn't anticipate in aging. And I can wake up with very negative thoughts to myself, and to bring myself back to compassion for that, compassion for the body that can't help that it's not able to be used the way it was before. So to keep on saying right speech internally is very helpful.
Yes, it's so simple that something happens and then we get to interpret what it means. And when you're coming from, I have a glass here, if you're coming from half empty, then you're in survival mode, and then no matter what happens, you're going to interpret it in a certain way. And then if you're coming from half full and you're coming from growth mode, love, you can say, okay, there's a lesson here for me here. What's the lesson? What do I need to understand? What I need to see? So if I can bring interest, this quality of interest, we call it one of the factors of awakening, which is investigation. There's suffering here. And Thich Nhat Hanh, obviously he passed away recently. A lot of my teachings come out of his teachings, and he says the idea is to get close to our suffering, because in the place of suffering, there's joy in that place. And so, and he talks about pulling out the weeds and making it compost. And so it's perspective. It's having the right view that, it's like we get old, we die, and we get sick. We act like that's not going to happen. It's going to happen, and to the degree that we can embrace it and say, yeah, this is here. But how, even though my body goes and all the other stuff goes, my mind, how I train my mind, that's different. And that's the real training, because you'll be able to let go of the other stuff. Just notice that it's like everything else. It arises and it fades. Trudy was in the meditation instructions, arising and fading away. We do that, but if we can just observe it and just notice that there's something that is observing that process, and we can identify with that, sometimes I call it the eye of the hurricane, but if we can just identify with the awareness of what's happening and not be identified with what's happening as being I, me, and mine, is very, very helpful, is to be able to understand that. But the fact that you were asking and thinking about it, there's a part of you that knows that there's some relief here. There's some peace that you can find in this process if we're able to bring as much mindfulness and compassion and love to it and seek to understand, because love and understanding are the same on some level. And as Viktor Frankl said, and it's my experience, when we find meaning in suffering, it ceases to be suffering. So we have to touch it. The only way out is through, always through. So we embrace it. I talk about embrace it. So this practice allows us to build a bigger container, so whatever comes up, we can manage it. So I use this analogy: if I could take a teaspoon of salt and put it in this container, and it's salty, but if I build a bigger container, then that same teaspoon of salt is not going to be so salty.
That's a great analogy. Thank you for that.
Thank you for your question.
Mhm.
Okay, Zach.
There it is. I just wrote my question down so I wouldn't forget it. So my camera's gonna go off. But hello. So it was kind of touched on a bit earlier, but something I've been struggling with a bit is the language around the word right. And was wondering if you could go a little deeper on an alternate translation. I think you said complete or something like that, just because I keep getting stuck on right, wrong.
Or wholeness, or whole, seeing the whole picture. So right is more like correct, more like workability. Like it's like another way of seeing right, as the word is, seeing clearly, being aligned with how things are. So I don't have to believe in gravity, but if I jump up, I will come down. And if I'm on the high surface, if I jump off it, I'm going down. So so right in that way is accurate, clear, and correct, and workable. The word that comes to me is workability. So the reason we suffer is because we don't consent to what's happening. But if what's happening is happening because the conditions are right, which means that the conditions are favorable. So another way of looking at rightness is favorable, but not in a moral sense, but in a sense of accuracy, a sense of clarity, a sense of wholeness, a sense of truth, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm curious how that would, for some of the, I'm forgetting the word, but for some of the things it's more clear to me how to be more clear and accurate. But for something like speech, for example, how would that fit into
speech? Right speech is speech that is wholesome or inclusive. A speech that harmonious. See, you with the word you can bring, whether it's your internal mind, body, heart, and soul, or spirit, however you want to call it, having harmony there, or having harmony in your relationship, in your community. There's a safety that happens when we are doing things with compassion, with wisdom, with love. It just creates a safety in it, and it's a workability issue. What I mean by workability is like you have a bridge that goes over a lake or a body of water. If there's no integrity in that bridge, you can't get to the other side. So it's a workability. So when we talk about right, we're talking about correct, or we're talking about workable, or up to the challenge of the reality. So that there's a like when you know the truth shall make you free. Right. So it's like understanding, seeking, so a lot of it has to do with, right, it leads to wholesome, it leads to peace, it leads to understanding. So that's another way of thinking about right, in the sense of what we're using it. It's seeing it in the right way. So I can look at things in a way where, like I said, like I could be really mindful and make effort and concentration to rob somebody or to make somebody wrong. That's not right. And there's a part of us that knows. So the heart knows when we're off, when we're doing something that's unwholesome. We can feel it. And sometimes it's a matter of reflecting, as Trudy talked about, but don't get hung up on the words. Just look at it as a way of wholesomeness, or complete, whole, complete. Maybe
wise. Thank you both. George, thank you so much. I hope you'll come back soon, because we actually have to stop. I love listening to you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody. We're going to take a moment now. Just we always take a moment to really, literally today, just a moment to meditate and offer our gratitude for the blessings of this practice. At the end of our time of studying, listening to teachings, practicing together, and I consider our conversation and interaction part of our study together, and certainly part of our listening to teachings, the teachings of each other and what we're going through in our lives. So we take a moment to just express our gratitude for whatever has been beneficial during this time, since, as the Buddha said, our work in this life is to be of benefit, to be a blessing for ourselves and for others, for both. May we and all beings continue to grow in our capacity for love and understanding. So thank you everybody again, and I want to remind you that after a 10-minute intermission, there will be breakout groups, and Caroline will help you with that part, and look forward to seeing you next week. And thank you, George.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you,
me here. I'm
George.
so
Yeah,
grateful.
breakout rooms will be in about at 12:40. So just take a quick break and then we'll talk in smaller groups.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Love you.
Love you too.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I think you should be able to unmute yourself now. I took
Okay.
off that setting just because I hope the
Thank you.
Zoom bombers aren't going to come after us anymore.
Thank you.
Caroline, that must have been very difficult.
It
Must
was
have been
just
very
like,
challenging.
I wouldn't say it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was a little bit of a more interesting Sunday sit group experience for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I'm
There's
grateful to
nothing-
this group because I
But
don't think I would have gotten
Bernard,
that.
you were
Me
really
too.
helping me out by letting me know who you thought was a bomber or not. And then there were some other people that were like, "Oh, I think she was a bomber last week," so I'd like remove her from the meeting. Meanwhile, like
Oh,
Trudy's
cool.
talking about, being present and not stressed. So that was kind of
Yeah.
funny.
Well, I hope we were right about all the people signing in with their phone, but it just looked really weird to me.
Yeah, no, and they were like the first people on the call too, which was kind of suspicious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
So I made a screenshot of that, and I wonder, I don't know if we want to identify them or let Zoom know, or
Yeah,
I
so
don't know.
when I removed them from the meetings, Zoom is notified.
Oh,
So I sent
really?
a report to them. So I don't know
Oh,
how long that takes to get processed, but hopefully those accounts or numbers will be at least maybe blocked. Not sure what the process is, but I think we're gonna there's a new coordinator for InsightLA volunteer work. And so unfortunately he joined. Meanwhile, there's been all these Zoom bombing incidents. So that's kind of hard for him.
really?
Like, he's trying to figure
Yeah,
out how to take over this
yeah,
position, but also like we're having problems for the first time. So he's
yeah.
working on coordinating away different preventative strategies. I hope that he sends an email out to all the participants, kind of articulating those expectations and strategies, just so everyone's on the
Yeah.
same page in terms of like joining with a Zoom account and whether or not there's going to be a passcode and that kind of thing, but it should be streamlined by next week. I'm going to just let him know of different issues we ran into. And so that you guys are all on the same page.
Great, great.
Well, there's nothing
Yeah.
like not getting in to reinforce how much a person wants to get in. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very helpful too, how George just kind of went through his thought
Mhm.
process because he had a hard time getting on. And I just loved when he said, if you're in gratitude mind, then you've got the right mind or the most helpful mind and the wise view, and it's a safety. And I just really like that.
Are there moments, or I guess so we're going to be doing a small breakout room now just because there's only 6 people here. I want to ask you guys, are there moments or periods of your life where you think you had a stronger sense of that grateful, wise mind, or how does that fluctuate for you?
Well, I like the question. I do struggle with the term right mind for a couple of reasons. One is because my religious upbringing was very
Yeah.
rigid and right and wrong and very extreme. So I do like the term wise mind. But I also had an experience this week that I just felt sort of like the balance of just wanting to connect and not make things worse in an interaction that I had ended up being helpful. Like I had an interaction with someone at my work, my manager actually, and it just went awry. We were trying to problem solve something, at least that was my perception, and then suddenly it felt like I was being accused of something, or expectations that were totally unreasonable of me. And I felt emotionally like this biting, clawing, screaming feral kitten, I mean, I just was it really triggered that survival mode thing for me. And I was so confused because I didn't understand her perception, but I knew it felt bad. So like afterwards, when I had a chance to get home and just be with myself, I was just trying to be present with myself and, hold that in a place of gentle kindness for me, and also trying to remember that about her. So, but it was interesting how just from like an internal gut place, I knew that it was supposed to be about love and connection, and that I was way off, and I felt like maybe she was too. So I don't know if that plays into this, but I just found myself the next day going back and just apologizing for my tone and the way that I had said a few things. And she was like, oh, no, you're right. And it just went to a connection again. So I just kind of felt like, oh, like even when I was trying to experience the emotions, I was like, oh, that's it. It's like a place of like a container for all of that.
No, I
Yes.
think that definitely makes sense.
Well, it makes me think that I think whenever at least one person in the haywire interaction is willing to stop and own their own stuff, it almost always turns it around.
Mm.
And it happened to me yesterday. It happened to you again this morning, right before this.
Mm.
And it because it takes you out of, and it takes out of you who's right and who's wrong, because almost always it takes two to tango, right? Almost always both people have some piece of it. And it usually just takes the first person to stop and own it and make themselves a little bit vulnerable by doing that, step out of the fight. And then it's amazing to me, getting back to Caroline's question, is like, then I become incredibly grateful that's almost like magic. It doesn't mean it happens 100% of the time, because some people are just so stuck in their stuff, they'll keep accusing you. But most of the time, and if that's the kind of person you're dealing with, and it happens over and over again, maybe you don't want to deal with them a whole lot if you can help it, But it's just pretty magical, I think. And I'm grateful for having a way out, because I used to not have a way out. I was like, get my back against the wall and I will keep fighting my point of view and attacking your point of view and maybe your character and, da 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 da. And I like the word wise, because that is not wise. We all know, right? That just leads to suffering for everybody. Or the other word that I used to not understand was skillful. Talk about skillful, right? And I was like, what? And then you start thinking about it. Yeah, it's really not skillful to not do that. You know what I mean? Because you end up in terrible messes and everybody suffers. So I'm grateful for a way out. And it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy, what I find, right? You really have to get over yourself in the moment, to stop, make yourself vulnerable, own your part, make space for them. So that's simple, but it's not easy.
Very true. Yeah, it's all about that space, but it takes a second to get there. I notice, if I'm being consistent in my mindfulness practice and kind of making an active effort of being mindful and aware of the thoughts that are going through my head, and practicing gratitude daily, it will take maybe like 1 to 2.5 weeks to kind of get in a groove. And then I find that the time it takes to get to that wise mind, or I feel like I naturally become in a habit of approaching things with that wise mind, is how I kind of experience it. But I don't think I'm there now just because I haven't been as consistent. But for me, this meeting was a good reminder of where I want to be in terms of my perception. And it's just a matter of how you're filtering your experience.
Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for people who are dealing with that hot moment when someone just upsets you. And I had that with my sister about a month or two ago. And it's very hard to set it aside and just to learn that when I'm feeling that way, just take a deep breath and don't say anything until you're back on earth. So that's the thing, like when I'm impatient, when I'm stressed, it's just a little more challenging at times.
No, sometimes shutting up is the hardest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. It's like, that's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's.
What's the right thing to say here? No thing.
No thing. Yeah.
No thing.
Right. Zip it.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard for me just to make my ego stop defending myself in my mind. You can carry that argument on and on and on. I mean, and I think it's normal to process conversations. But geez, that's anyway.
So Candace, what about for you? How was today for you? How are you?
Oh, I really like George Mumford. He said something, the grateful mind attracts, and then I forget what the rest he was saying. Do you remember?
No. I'll have to look for it when I hear the recording later.
But I know it attracts goodwill and good results. I know that. I don't think those were his words. I think he said it better. I know what you mean. That's about as much of it as I remember. But I just loved when he said that, when you're when your mind is grateful, then if you're in a grateful view, then you have the most productive view and the most productive mind in terms of your interactions.
It's part of my, sorry, I thought you were done.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's part of my 12-step work. I don't know, a couple of years ago, I started writing 10 things every night that I'm grateful for before I go to bed. And it doesn't sound like much. It's profound how it will change your mind, actually. I mean, it helps your sleep too, but it just carries over, and it's just it's like brushing my teeth. It makes a huge difference. I wish I'd been doing it 40 years ago.
Do you say the same things every night or different things? Or
there are usually some things, my wife, my son, and then those are always there at the top, and then it's just stuff from the day, people, situations, sometimes my hot tub. I mean, just whatever, things that I am genuinely grateful for if I stop to think about it. It opens your heart in a very nice way, actually.
Yeah,
I can really get into kind of what's wrong, what I've got to fix, what to do, all that.
Yeah.
Sorry, so you have a journal?
Yeah, right by the bed, and it's the only thing I put in it. It's that, but you could put in anything.
Yeah, I notice, like, if I do gratitude practice pretty regularly, that there will be some things that always make it in there, but sometimes something new will pop up like, oh, wow, how amazing are my toes when I'm walking, you know?
Yeah.
Small
Yes,
things
right.
that you just don't really recognize usually. Or
It
like,
is no small wonder.
yeah. Or
Because
wow, I get
I've
to sleep
talked,
inside. You know, I don't, yeah, things, it's awesome.
I talked to someone who was missing one big toe and they wanted to remove the other. And he said,
Oh,
you know how difficult it is to walk without your big toe?
Hmm.
can
It is incredibly difficult. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have the right push off. And, you
Mhm.
know, I mean, these little simple things are huge.
I do the same thing, Bob, before I
Mhm.
go to bed, or I try to. It doesn't happen every night, but when I'm mindful about it, it does. And I notice it helps me, get into that frame of mind I want to have when I'm going to sleep. But also, I feel it a little bit the next morning. I feel like I wake up in a
Mhm.
little bit of a better mood. So that's how I see it play out. And it's always nice to start your day off in that naturally great mood, like, oh, the sun is shining and I can't wait for this today, versus the, oh, I'm late for this. And you go here, like,
Right.
to-do list, it changes your morning experience a little bit too.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the toes because, first of all, I never thought about that, and I'm glad because now I will. But what it made me remember is that you really, if you stop to think about it, you could never stop writing.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, 10 is
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
barely scratching the surface, and
Yeah.
if you're willing to think about all the things you're grateful for, I don't care how miserable your life is sometimes, there's still, an enormous amount of stuff to be grateful for. And that's uplifting, really, especially when things are bad. I mean, when at times when I've been having a really hard time, it felt like a lifesaver to be able to do that,
Mhm.
I start my meditation by being grateful for my mother, my father, my sisters, and brother, because for a long time I wasn't.
Yeah.
And then you think about it, and you think about what they brought my way that was really beneficial. I mean, it's like, what was I thinking? But it also led me to the other thing that, I mean, one guy told me, if you're waiting for a friend who's not going to disappoint you, you'll be waiting a long time. And it's true with family. I mean, it just seems like, the same people who love you can hurt you or disappoint you, but it doesn't mean they're, I should cancel them or, just totally throw them out. I mean, it's not right, because I mean, it cuts the other way. I
Yeah.
hurt them as well.
Yeah.
And I got to forgive myself, and I want to forgive them, and so it just kind of goes in a circle.
Mhm.
Well, I'm grateful for you guys.
Yeah,
Me
yeah,
too.
it was really nice to be able to talk on the phone with you guys while I was going through what I was going through, and know that I wasn't alone and locked out of something I had been looking forward to.
Yes. Yes.
And
I
I'm
know,
grateful
I'm
to
so
you, Bernard. Bernard was working with me for about 20 minutes to get in
Oh.
today, and finally got to Caroline, and so I finally made it.
Yeah, here, I'm
that's
gonna go
great.
ahead. I'll put my phone number in the
Oh.
chat. So if
Oh,
you
great.
are having trouble, I don't moderate every single week, but
Uh-huh.
I do have the numbers of some of the other moderators if you need to get in contact with them. I know
Okay.
it's gonna be a little bit bumpy coming up, probably with all the new with the new person that's in charge of the volunteering, and then also just the issues we've had with Zoom bombers, which I'm just like, why are they choosing to intrude on InsightLA's?
You must be very bored.
But yeah, it's just kind of random, I think. But yeah, that's my number.
Thank
I
you.
usually
Thank you.
do every 2
I
weeks.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, of course.
Oh, every 2 weeks?
Uh-huh.
Did they
but
bomb
then
in? Did they
again,
bomb in today?
yeah, we had some suspicious numbers coming in, but then some people that were like, what's his? It's not Zach. Neil. Neil said, "Oh, I was locked out because there was a password, so then I used my phone to get in, but we're not allowed to accept phone people anymore." So then I was
Oh.
denying all the phones. So I could have been denying real participants, but then some people were. But then it was brought up to me that Zoom bombers come in via phone sometimes, and then there was another girl there that someone texted me. It was like, "Oh, she was a bomber from last week," so I took her out, and she kept trying to come in. But yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I think it will be like that for maybe the next time. But Sam, the new volunteer coordinator, I don't know if he'll ever pop in on the call, but he should be taking care of making a protocol that's announced to everyone else.
Sounds
How
good.
do they just sign up? Do they sign up? How do they even get the link or whatever?
I'm pretty
started one,
sure.
yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how they get the link. I think they're hackers, so they have probably access to some sort of database via Zoom, something along the lines of that, and can just go into random meetings. That's my prediction, but I'm sure there's more information about it on the internet.
Well, I was really glad to get the part from you. Thank you, Bernard, about that I had to actually do an account in Zoom before my link would work, because I've been on many Zooms with different places, and I've never actually had to do an account. So that was good to know. I ended up doing that, and then it worked. So
Great.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
and
Yeah, I don't
it's-
even know if I've got an account. I have to check.
I think you do, Bernard. It's only
Yeah.
when the phone number comes up.
Oh,
Sort of, not 100%.
Yeah, there's still a person in the meeting, Ellen Medway.
Yeah, I'm thinking Ellen forgot to log out of the Zoom.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. I think
we always have a
that's-
straggler.
Yeah.
Eventually it asked me, it said I had the option to sign in with Google because I put in my other stuff and it denied it, my password and everything from Zoom. So I tried the Google thing, and that's when it said I was locked out. I thought, I finally got there. Anyway, but it worked eventually. So
Great.
Took a lot of coordination with me and Bernard and Bob and.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you guys come to these so you
Thank
have each
you.
other to
Yeah.
contact, because I'm assuming we lost a couple people today that were maybe
Probably.
joining late and that don't come to breakout rooms, so they weren't sure who to contact.
Well, no, I had given up. Remember, Bernard, I sent something to Bernard saying, I'll see you next week. And then he came back to me 5 minutes later and done something with you, Caroline. So
Yeah, he was great.
there were probably
Thank
other
you,
people.
Caroline,
there were probably
your
other people that
patience, too.
gave up. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Sharon.
That's okay. I was just saying thanks, Caroline, for
Yeah.
stressing through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's good to see each of you. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Hope you had a
Bye.
good week, Candace.
Thank you. You too. I'm glad we could connect and Bob could get on, and it
Yeah.
all worked out. Took some effort, but teamwork, yay.
Teamwork.
Yes.
I love this group.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
love you guys. Thanks.
Thank
Okay,
you.
guys.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have a good
everyone.
one.
Okay.